In January 2024, a 32-year-old woman stood outside the World Economic Forum in Davos holding a sign that said, "Tax the rich." Nothing unusual about that. More protesters do that every year. What was unusual is that she was one of the rich. Her name is Marlene Engelhorn. She's an heir to the company that makes BASF, one of the largest chemical companies on Earth, and about 5 months later, she gave away 25 million euros. Not to her kids, not to a foundation with her name on it, to 50 total strangers she'd never met. Now, if you inherited a fortune, most people assume you do what everyone in every inheritance movie does. Buy a yacht, fight your siblings in court, disappear to a private island. But there's a small, strange, and growing group of billionaire and multimillionaire heirs doing the exact opposite. They're looking at generational wealth like it's a hot potato and actively trying to get rid of it before it burns their hands. So here's the real question we're going to answer today. Why would anyone refuse free money? Is this just rich person guilt theater? Or is something bigger actually happening here? Because right now, we're on the edge of the largest wealth transfer in human history. And a small number of people standing at the front of the line are quietly stepping out of it. Let's start with the number that makes all of this matter. According to Cerulli Associates, a research firm that tracks this stuff for a living, baby boomers and the generation before them are expected to pass down about $84 trillion to their kids and grandkids over the next 20 years or so. Of that, roughly $72 trillion goes directly to heirs, actual people, and the rest goes to charity. That's not a typo. $84 trillion. For context, the entire US economy produces about $27 trillion worth of stuff in a single year. This wealth transfer is basically three Americas changing hands, quietly over 2 decades, mostly without anyone voting on it. And most of the people receiving it will do what people have done with inheritances forever. Keep it, invest it, maybe feel a little weird about it at a dinner party, and move on with their lives. But a small number of heirs looked at that money and had the opposite reaction. Not gratitude, guilt. And they didn't just donate 10% to charity and call it a day. Some of them are trying to give away the whole thing. Take Abigail Disney. Yes, that Disney one, granddaughter of Roy O. Disney, who co-founded the company with his brother Walt. She came into a fortune reportedly worth around $120 million at 21 years old. Since then, she's given away roughly $70 million. And according to Disney herself, within just a couple of years of starting, she was giving away more money than her own already wealthy parents, which she says they found embarrassing. So why would anyone do this? For Engelhorn, it comes down to one specific fact about Austria. The country has no inheritance tax at all. So when her grandmother passed away in 2022 and left her millions, the government took nothing. Engelhorn has said publicly that she didn't feel she'd earned that money or that position, that being born into a wealthy family is essentially a lottery ticket, and lottery tickets shouldn't come with that much power attached. So instead of waiting for a tax system that doesn't exist, she built her own. She partnered with a research organization, mailed invitations to around 10,000 randomly selected Austrians, and narrowed it down to 50 people chosen to represent the country's population by gender, income, and background. That council spent weeks deciding how to give away her fortune, and in June 2024, they announced the money would go to 77 different organizations working on social and climate causes. Abigail Disney's reasoning runs on a similar track, but with a sharper edge. She said publicly that any billionaire who can't live on $999 million is, in her words, kind of a sociopath. Her argument isn't really about generosity, it's about math. Once you have that much money, it grows faster than you could possibly spend it, whether you do anything with it or not. Just by sitting there, it makes you richer. And here's the part that might surprise you. This isn't just 2 or 3 eccentric heirs having a moment on Instagram. There's an actual organization for this. It's called Resource Generation, and it's been around since 1998. It runs a yearly conference literally called Making Money Make Change, where young people, usually under 35, with inherited wealth get together to figure out how to give it away responsibly instead of just writing one guilty check and moving on. One of its earliest documented members is Chuck Collins, an heir to the Oscar Mayer meatpacking fortune, who gave away his roughly $500,000 inheritance back when he was 26, worth well over $1 million today. He didn't disappear after that. He's spent decades since then working on economic inequality policy. And it's apparently working at scale, at least within this small world. Resource Generation says its members end up giving 16 times more to economic and racial justice causes after joining than they did before. Now, to be fair, this isn't the same as what people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett do. Gates has said his kids will inherit less than 1% of his fortune, But that's Gates making that decision for his kids, before they ever had the money. What Engelhorn, Disney, and Collins did is different. They already had the money in their own names and chose to give it away themselves. And it's not always easy, even for true believers. Resource Generation's own members admit the hardest test comes when heirs have kids of their own. Committing to give away money is one thing when it's just you, but a lot harder to sustain once there's a next generation depending on you. There are also real critics of this whole movement who point out that even a $70 million or $27 million gift, however meaningful to the organizations receiving it, is a rounding error against an $84 trillion wealth transfer. Voluntary generosity from a handful of guilty heirs doesn't restructure an economy. A tax system might. Even Engelhorn agrees with that critique. She's said explicitly that her giveaway is a workaround for the tax Austria refuses to pass, not a replacement for one. So no, this isn't a mass movement that's about to redistribute $84 trillion. It's a small number of people, mostly in their 20s and 30s, deciding that inheriting a fortune you didn't earn comes with a responsibility, not just a payday. Whether you think that's admirable or performative probably depends on how you feel about inherited wealth in general. But here's what's hard to argue with. In a world where most people spend their entire lives trying to get more money, there's a small, strange group of people spending real time and energy trying to get rid of it. On purpose, in public, and with their name attached. So next time someone tells you money can't buy happiness, remember, some people had so much of it, giving it away was the only thing that made them feel better. If you want to see more stories like this, about money, power, and the weird decisions people make with both, hit subscribe and let us know in the comments. If you inherited $25 million tomorrow, would you keep it or give it away?